Cool.
Let's do
We're
it.
ready, ladies.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers. So, hey, fam, welcome back. We've got our tea back for those of you that have been tuning in since season 1. It's been a minute.
It has.
But for those of you just tuning in now, I am Tessa Markle. This is Carolina Alvarez. We are your hosts of FemmeRegardPodcast, and we are bringing you guys the most exciting industry professional guests to teach you all the stuff you want to know about filmmaking.
Yes, and today is a very special episode because not only are we recording, but we are filming it live here at the network studios in Culver City with our fabulous guest, who we'll get to in just a sec. But we are here to talk today about film gear, especially. And, you know, as producers, things that just go over our heads, like what's the best camera to practice filmmaking on? And should we even buy a camera, and which one? What essentially should be in our filmmaker's toolbox that is worth investing in? Because let's face it, gear doesn't tend to be cheap.
No. And if you are just listening to the audio right now, we want to remind you that on our YouTube channel, which is FemmeRegard Productions, you can actually watch this whole episode. So we have a few of those every now and then. Every episode audio is on there, but the special ones are video. And if you want to see the gear demonstration that we're going to do at the end of the episode today, become a Patreon at patreon.com/FemmeRegard. And for as little as $5 a month, you can get exclusive access to special content like today's gear demonstration.
Oh, yeah. And so to introduce our guest, her name is Nicki Sun. She's a filmmaker, she's a host, she's the founder of Nicki Sun Media, which is an amazing, accessible website dedicated to filmmaking and gear tips. So you can also check that out on the gram at Tech Nicki Speaking. It's fabulous. There's so much good stuff on there. And she is also the host of a live show, Live with Nicki Sun, for the NAB show, which is also one of the biggest events hosted for you can see live cutting edge training and just get the general what's the latest and greatest on the new technology. So guys, she is with it. She's in the know, and we're going to welcome Miss Nicki Sun.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much. It just feels so great to finally, this is my first in-person interview since the panorama.
Yeah.
So
welcome back to semi-normal life.
I know. Thank you for having me on
this is
set.
ours too. Yeah. This is our first live. We've been trying, but it's just been so crazy and so hard.
I mean, I actually got COVID and I'm vaccinated. So
no.
craziness, but living off those antibodies right now.
Yes, help yourself to some tea, girl.
I know.
We
Thank you for
haven't
getting
done this. Let's
tea.
do a little
Absolutely. Oh, let's cheers it.
I know.
Cheers
Cheers.
to making it to live discussion.
Yes.
This is so special.
I have to say, I'm so appreciative that you bring tea. Most sets on filmmaking sets always have coffee, but tea always tends to be a special order, and I always feel like an inconvenience. So that's why I always bring my own. So I'm very grateful that you have brought tea for us today.
Absolutely.
So we can spill the tea.
Yes. That's what we live for, spilling the tea and soothing the voice, of course.
Yes, exactly. It's great for the voice.
Keeps it hydrated. We haven't done this in a minute too, not having been in the studio. So it's fun to bring it back, to spill the tea on production, and have this live conversation with you. So as always, we love to start learning about where you came from, like what even branched your interest and then led you to being, I would say, an expert. You know what you're doing, knowing what you're doing, and like the expert in the film gear and tech world, because that stuff just.
Yeah, I mean, anybody's an expert to me, but like you're a real expert.
Well, first of all, you're so kind. And I think what it is I don't consider myself an expert in anything. I just am naturally curious. I always love to learn, and I love and appreciate learning from the people who know more than me. I'm not afraid to say, I don't know that. Can you explain that? I think a lot of people sometimes get a little shy about asking for things that they don't know or don't understand. And especially, I'm going to say, just as a woman, when we say stuff like that, they like, oh, it's expected because why would you know that? But I think in this field in tech, you almost have to work 10 times harder to know your stuff, because being underestimated, though, is I'd rather be underestimated than overrated. So
like
I
that.
think really what started my journey was, you know, I've always wanted to be able to tell stories. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what gear you have. I know gear is like fancy, but if you have a story to tell, you'll find a way to tell it in the most authentic way as possible. So growing up, I was able to do so many different things. I was very more into sports, huge tomboy. I always
What's your favorite sport?
Oh my gosh. So tennis, I love tennis. I love watching basketball, and I actually played tackle football with the boys in junior high.
Nice.
I just come from a very like boy background. Like the whole presentation part didn't really hit me until college when I met like one of I call her my sister. She was my RA, and one day I went out in a dress and she was like, she was so gentle about this too, though. She was like, can I do your makeup? Can I like help you? And, I am so grateful to her because I really wanted to do journalism, hosting, but, things were not matching. So I have to say, like, I'm very thankful for the amazing, incredible women in my life. I'm all about empowered women empowering other women. I think society pits women against each other so much already. So I really want to embrace and celebrate all that is in divine femininity.
Yes.
And just growing up, always thinking it was so weak to be a woman. I think that's why I was like such a boy. It's like I hated being a woman. I remember asking, like my teacher asked, like, can I get some volunteers to help carry books to the next room? And I raised my hand. He literally looked at me and said, boys. And I was like, these are books. Like, do you think I'm super weak? Like, I'm offering. Isn't that more of like a volunteer consideration thing?
Yeah.
And I think I did everything I could to be such a dude. And to the point where I was losing myself of like, why am I pretending to be someone or something that I'm not? And so authenticity has been so important. And anytime I get a chance to like speak to a different audience, especially young girls or young folks like looking to get into this industry, like authenticity and storytelling is like huge in your toolkit. That's something you can't buy. So that's something that you have to work on 100% first.
Yes.
So I started a nonprofit. My dad was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer, and at that time I had no idea how to help, what to do, finding a match. It was very ethnic specific. And I'm like, I don't even know the first thing. And so I started volunteering with the Asian American Donor Program in the Bay Area where I'm from. And I realized, how do I showcase that this is something that needs to be done? And I had a camera, not like crazy fancy or anything. We didn't have like those phones back then. So there was a camera, a point and shoot. And I had Quest Crew, which were the winners of ABDC Dance Crew. They're like an Asian American group. And I just, gave them swab kits to just show how easy it is to save a life. Like all you got to do is like swab your cheek cells, get on the registry, and you can help save a life with someone looking for a bone marrow transplant. And I think that really just sparked my journey of, okay, how can I tell stories but also make it entertaining and fun and informational? So I kind of branded my own kind of category like infotainment, where it's informational but it's also entertaining.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be news and report on sad stuff all the time, but I also didn't want to be TMZ and gossip. So I think I had to pave my own way and create my own channel. So the first channel I created was Nicki Sun, just under my name. I was interviewing a lot of up-and-coming Asian American aspiring artists, indie artists, people who weren't getting their voices heard on mainstream. And, as I'm doing this, I'm realizing I have to play with all the gear myself as a one-woman band. Sometimes we don't have the capacity to hire so many people.
Right.
And I want to make sure I can pay fairly, so you have to learn a lot of things on your own in the beginning. And I was like, I know a lot in this creator generation, there's so many people who want to do that too. And if I can just help, just impart some kind of knowledge or some familiarity or make it sure that they don't feel like it's a dumb question. Like, trust. This is what I'm here for. There's so many males on YouTube telling you how to do things, and it's great, but I think I just want to add perspective.
Yeah.
Like a different perspective of why you would utilize this gear. The whole specific terminology or the specs are not as important. I mean, they are cool for like the nerd in me, but someone who's watching who doesn't have any information or knowledge of it, it's like, I want to empower. So I want to empower that community and that audience and make it feel like a awesome, fun, engaging, safe space. Drop a question in my Instagrams, to make it feel accessible. And so like it's kind of like my overall like arcing of my soul of why I do what I do. But I think that in a nutshell has really helped me go transition to really help empower other creators to create content to help them share their authentic story and their authentic selves, because that gives me so much like happiness knowing that people are creating and they feel confident, and that especially young women can see themselves doing it.
Mhm.
And so I'm just very grateful to share space with you both today. It's so fabulous that you have a podcast on filmmaking and led by two badass women. So I'm just really excited to like share energy and space with you both today.
Yeah. And I love that, like, the whole motivation behind what you're doing, because that's exactly what we're all about, is just empowering women and really sharing the female voice, and the whole reason, if listeners too, if you don't know enough about us yet, the reason we came up with the name FemmeRegard for our company was talking about the female perspective, the female lens on things, because so many times there's stories about women that are told by men, and that's okay. Like, men can tell women's stories, women can tell men's stories, but you have to make sure you're really telling it through that female eye, and that's not really done enough. So we just want to be able to really maximize that voice and get it out there. And especially the women that do want to tell their stories that aren't getting those chances, because, let's be real, sometimes it is hard as a woman in this industry to get noticed and to get hired.
Totally. And I love that you say that, because I always have to clarify that I'm not anti-men.
Right.
I am not anti anything, so it's really what I want to express and share every time I talk to a very white male dominated industry, that what I ultimately want to do is just add a perspective, right? You hire a director for their eye. So if you're saying that the past directors have been X amount or this certain type of person, we're getting storytelling from one specific lens. And just like cameras, when you widen the lens, it makes room for more people to tell their beautiful, diverse stories, and one that is more reflective of the actual world that we live in. So we're not saying like, oh, hire me instead of you, but what if, a woman can actually be, consulted to tell a story, because this movie or this film or this narrative has to do very strongly with like a woman. I was looking at Reese Witherspoon when she launched Hello Sunshine, because I said that trademark. So I'm like, oh, somebody took my Hello Sunshine production, but I'm like, this is amazing. And she was saying in her acceptance speech, I think it was for Elle magazine, she's like, it was always weird seeing movies and like the woman is featured saying like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? And she's so right in a way where it's like, women would never ask that question. We would know the answers. Like, they're always telling that women are like overthinkers and stuff. Like, we would never be the type to be in a movie like, oh my gosh, what would I do? Damsel in distress. Like, we would know how to do it A through Z, and like give you so many solutions, and also do it in an empathetic way where everybody feels included and like empowered and hyped up. So why would we ever be in a trope of a movie saying, what would I do? I don't know what to do. So
that is so funny and so true. Like,
so accurate.
Absolutely hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. So I'm just like, she's so right. I've been like, so it's like it's understanding that everybody has different perspective, but also like, what can we do? And I think women now are feeling so empowered to create their own podcasts, to create their own films, to create their own narratives, to submit to Sundance. Like, it's not really a ladder straight of where you're doing. I feel like with media being so accessible now and everybody could just pick up a phone as their first camera.
Right.
I mean, everybody has a story to tell. So it's never really about what gear you do or do not have. It's really like, what story do I have? And everybody has a story. And that's the cool thing.
Yes.
Like, everybody has a story. Like, no one is you. Like, your story is uniquely yours. So feel empowered by that. If you are feeling like, I want to start, but I don't know where to start, like, start within. Like, you have a story to tell. How am I best going to connect with other people who can carry my vision to light? And really that can kind of come through over imposter syndrome that I feel like a lot of people feel. Is like, be confident, know you are enough, and know that everybody has a unique story and no one will ever be you.
Yeah, that's so inspiring. And that's something else we talk about on the show a lot is, And I think sometimes people get a little maybe confused and think, oh, well, that means I have to tell my story, like my life story. And that's not the case. It could be, but it just means that whatever story you have inside you, there's a reason that it's yours. It's your perspective. Nobody else has your,
It's your fuel, your fire for what you want to do, and how, like, I love that you said it's your way to connect with others.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even, connecting for jobs or getting to networking. That's how know your story, because that is something you can lead with in conversation. You don't have to share everything, but it's like, I love that you said it kind of fights that imposter syndrome. So it's not something you should necessarily brave to have to like share all the time. I know like it can be hard, and when you're right, we've always talked about being like authentic and write your story. And I do think that's where your sometimes your juice, your bread and butter can really come from, if you really share that with others. But it's just remind yourself. It could just be that reminder to you to why you're doing what you're doing and keeping you moving forward in an industry that is hard. You know, like at the end of the day, you can feel burnout real quick. And so, but if you know your story, you know why you're doing it, it just keeps you going and finding solutions to like getting overwhelmed by film equipment or pre-production or whatever. So that's why I like, thank you for sharing your story and about your dad. And it's so inspiring and original. Like, like it's so authentic to you. Like you immediately, when you shared that, I'm like, I get this girl. I love her voice and her passion behind it. And that's like what makes you stand out so much, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even like we were talking about story, right? Everybody's like, what if they don't want me to share it? I'm like, no, share it. Like, share it. Like, okay, let's say, for instance, we pour tea. Everybody knows how to pour tea, but how do you pour tea? It might be different, but you just don't know until you observe and watch other people. So don't limit yourself and your limitations, saying like, well, it's been done before, so why would I be different or unique? And like YouTube is so saturated, like what if I start a channel and it's like there's so many of them like them? But again, like you have a different perspective, you have a different story to tell, so just put it out there. And the people who are cheering you on are the people you want around in your life anyways. And if you're always open to take constructive criticism and grow from it and always learn, like you'll be totally fine. So I just like, if you want to start something on like underwater basket weaving, do it, and if there's like 2 channels, great, be the best at that, you know, like just hone your craft to be the best at it, but do something you're passionate about. Because again, to avoid burnout, and I think the reason why I've been able to avoid burnout all these years is I've never really just taken one platform and like, okay, I want to be a YouTube star, I want to do this, I want to do that. I've always like blurred the lines between traditional and non-traditional forms of media, or like professional corporate work, and also my YouTube channel. So it allows me to figure out how to, as a producer, also get all these parties involved, make sure everybody gets along, and that everybody's mutually benefiting at the same time. Because if one person's always taking and not giving, that relationship's gonna go south. So it's like everything, like how does everything as a whole affect each other is what I look for. And I don't need to hold myself to a regimen of like, okay, every Tuesday, Thursday I have to post like these things. If I don't, I feel like I'm irrelevant, or like I can't keep up. That's what causes burnout. So you have to really enjoy what you're doing and create a schedule that is realistic for yourself, and give yourself so much grace in the process when you're figuring it out. Don't give up. If I gave up, like when I first started hosting, I would not be here right now. I swear I did my first story at my college student television station on like the Segundo Fair. And it was my first time ever doing a story. I looked at that tape and immediately was like, oh my gosh, I froze. I didn't know what to do. I was so nervous, and I was like, okay, I quit. I can't do this. And then I was like, I'm not a quitter though. So when my friend was a breakdancer and there was this breakdancing competition at UC Davis, my alma mater, I was like, let me try this again because I'm passionate about it. I know a friend in it. Let me just try telling it from my authentic lens of why I'm covering this as an entertainment host, why this is cool. And because I was so passionate about it, and because I just naturally love it, it comes off in how I present it too. It's not like, let me memorize this script. I'm like, no, you don't need to memorize the things that you're passionate about. And so when I did that, I had a female videographer. She was filming me, and it was her actually, that Bria Little, that said, hey, you're really good. And all it took was one person to say, hey, that was really good. And this is my second time. And then I was watching it back and I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. But it's crazy because if I didn't do that, I don't think I'd be confident to be in front of a camera because I really gave myself such a hard time criticizing my first one. I'm like, give yourself grace. It's not going to be perfect the first time. You might not even have the best camera in the world or whatever, but people have started on webcams. People have started on $200 camcorders. That's how Always Sunny in Philadelphia started. $200 camcorder pitch pilot, right? So it's never about what you have or don't have, but use what you got, which is your story and how you share it and always working to improve yourself. So if you're feeling a little strapped or stuck, just know that you're enough already.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm so surprised. When I talk to people about our podcast, I will get as far as, I host a podcast. Wait, you do? That's so cool. And in my mind, I'm thinking everybody has a podcast now, right? People shouldn't be that excited before they even know what it's about. But just the fact that I have a podcast, they're like, oh my God, that's so cool. Wait, what it's about. And I'm like, well, independent filmmaking, even that just extra step. They're like, really? Are you a filmmaker? It's so many of these things that to me are so everybody does it, but people are still excited about it. Yeah. So sometimes that validation does help remind you, even though you shouldn't rely.
But sharing it is so huge.
Yes,
I think also people might get stuck in oh, if I share this, it sounds like I'm bragging. I'm women already don't brag enough. Women, you need to brag more. It's
spill that tea.
We need that because it's not we're making a world a worse place. There's people who are getting way more social media following on things that they're doing that are actually harmful. So I'm like, let's have a better conversation. Let's have more positivity out there and let's share, because at the end of the day, if I know that you're doing something, I naturally want to help. I naturally want to connect. It's share your story, because I had no idea you had a podcast, right? And now we reached out, now we're connected. And now when I think about things in my life of, oh, you need, 2 podcast hosts, or you want to get on a podcast, now there's a connection. So it's definitely who you know as well, but it's also taking it upon yourself, the initiative to really want to help other people. And I think there's so many more people who want to help you rather than not help you.
Yeah.
So just know that people are supporting you. I wish I knew that earlier. It's I wish I knew that people are cheering you on and rooting for you and supporting you. Just because they haven't seen it yet doesn't mean it can't be done. Sometimes you need to prove it to them over time and time again, because they don't see it. They don't see an Asian host. They don't see a woman operating cameras. They don't see it. But I'm here to exist along with all the other amazing female filmmakers that let's put ourselves out there. Let's take photos, do videos. The more that's out there, it creates a dialogue and it opens more doors for everybody, not just you, for everybody,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with sharing and being excited about what you're doing. And I also fall into that trap where, I feel like I'm just gonna be talking too much about what I love doing, and even though it consumes my entire day-to-day life, sometimes I sit at those tables and I'm like, I don't really want to talk about what I'm doing. It's just a lot, but no, there's just nothing wrong with that. So I love that you ladies bring that up, because that, again, it's not bragging when you're just sharing what you're excited about and what you're passionate about. And to your point, yes, that's how you make those connections. And I love that.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris Fafalius, and I'm the producer of Krista Makes a Podcast and the host of the One Hit Thunder podcast.
And I'm Matt Kelly, host of Horror Movie Night and the producer / the head of content for the Geekscape Podcasting Network.
Between the two of us, we have, believe it or not, 25 years of podcasting experience, and we want to help you start your own podcast.
We know podcasting, and we want to share that knowledge with you.
So whether you're new to podcasting or you want some feedback on your currently active podcast, we want to help.
Or perhaps you're just overwhelmed with all of the editing work. Well, we can help you with that also.
You can contact us at info@weknowpodcasting.com for more information.
We're excited to help your podcasting dreams become a reality.
So, filming, film gear. I love that we started with that. It's really about having an authentic story. That's where it starts, and that it all the other stuff doesn't really matter. So, we're filmmakers and we don't have a camera other than
but you're making it work, right?
iPhone.
Exactly.
Did you need to buy this? No, but did you have connections that allow you to have this? Yes.
Exactly.
Facts.
And I will say, a lot of DPs, if they have a specific camera they want to use and they want to buy it, they want to rent it out, that's great. You can buy that $40,000 camera. You can buy that and, figure out how to make that rental work for you so you have long-term investment. But if you're also other DPs that, let's say this movie wants to specifically work with a specific camera, are you going to buy the camera every time? Like, no, you can rent it, you can borrow it. A lot of people do rent their cameras because I don't need a $100,000 camera just sitting in my apartment,
Right.
So for me, I'm looking more at what can I use every day, something to just utilize to bring around when I want to do travel documentaries, when I want to do interviews. I'm not going to be bringing around these massive things. And so sometimes I get a lot of young beginning filmmakers, they feel like the bigger is better, the more expensive is better. I'm like, no, It's really not. Because if you buy this really expensive camera and you only use it once, like, okay, rather like rent it or like start building your network of finding DPs that will actually teach you or have the patience to. And yeah, because you might be invested in one camera system, but this specific film set wants you to film on another one. So you have to be a little adaptable and flexible. But I think ultimately just practicing on your own, creating your content is so much more empowering. And then, yeah, there's plenty of workshops that you can do if you want to work with specific cameras. But for me, it's like, don't worry about the camera that you have. I mean, ultimately, a lot of us have a phone. And that is what I am filming on. And it's actually the first film that I got sponsored on by Samsung.
Nice.
And they basically paid me and reached out to tell a story utilizing their phone to prove that you don't need all this gear to really tell like a story. So I think that coupled with what I already do is nice because I really want to show beginning content creators that don't feel paralyzed because you don't know what to buy, but I'm here to also help you to let's see what you already have. Like, do you really need this? Or maybe
that's always the question.
Do this instead, or just like get a couple of things to just amplify and maximize and create the most optimal situation for what you currently have. And then as you grow and grow, then you build. So I didn't get everything overnight,
Right.
So it's like I've been building and collecting.
So you didn't take out $100,000 loan?
No, I did not take $100,000 out and like buy everything at once.
Cool.
And I also realized that I love tech and gear. So like if I started a tech and gear camera, maybe if I build it up enough, maybe these brands will just send me stuff and sponsor me, which is what's happening. So I'm like, other than food and technology, I'm like, I really don't spend money on other things. Like, so I'm like, well, if I can get one category of things that I like to be in a way amplifying partnerships, sponsors, allowing me to give away gear to beginning content creator and work with these brands who don't know how to reach out to the specific audience that I have, it's actually better long term. Just to have a nice partnership. Like, hey, you want to try this new camera? You're my partner. Like, I'm just going to send it to you. You can loan this indefinitely, or we could trade it out when the new one comes. And like, it's I'm creating content, getting the word out in exchange to utilize new gear. And most brands and most companies will find that like mutually beneficial. It's like, oh, she's creating content. So that gives me marketing materials. That gives me a brand ambassador in a way. And that also, shares our brand with other content creators in an authentic way. Like I actually use this stuff. You can't pay me to say certain things. Like I struggle with that in the beginning as Instagram and social media has become a thing. It's like, we will pay you like $5,000 to pose with this skinny gummy bear and say that you got skinny from it. And I'm like, I can't. And like, while that's amazing, like cool money for one photo, that's inauthentic to me. So this is why I always circle back to like, you have to know who you are before you say yes, no to things, because what you say yes to, work begets work. So I think I've done a long journey of a job where it's like, you don't get rich quick overnight, or you don't just get all these gigs, but it's the slow burn of like life being a marathon, not a sprint. And, everything is leading to other things. And if you give me the chance and the opportunity to show you what I'm capable of, great. That's one segment. Somebody else is watching that. That's going to be another thing, so you're really laying the foundation, but being very intentional of what you want to put in your foundation. So that's why it's easy for me to say no to things, even though it's great money, cool. I only have to take a photo, but then I'm going to get more work like that. And I'm like, that's not what I'm about. Like, I'm not about like the whole like let's look skinny, you know, like body positivity, you know. So it's like, you know, or like if you were vegan and a slaughterhouse was like, hey, we'll pay you $5,000 to like post this amazing bacon, like that's inauthentic to you. So if you had followers who are following you because you have a vegan lifestyle and you take that, I mean, how does that come off? So again, you have to know yourself first, and I think everything comes with it too. Like everything will always align if you really show your authentic self
and stay accountable and true to your message. We had our last podcast episode, guys, tune in if you haven't, was all about that too. We had a really great chat with these ladies because it's true that, again, aligns with everything, and it'll track, like you said, you don't want more just empty jobs like that. So stay focused, stay working hard on building with intention. I love that you said that to the kind of gigs you want. You know, I think it's so hard sometimes to just be like, oh, but that's gonna pay me, like you said, X amount. But it's like, no, stay focused and create the work you want. So that's totally, it sounds like it's accessible to just doing it. Like, it's amazing you did it on your, you started out on your iPhone. Like, that's just really inspiring too, because we've shot some iPhone content too, and that's really what we've been using when we don't have a fabulous studio to record it.
I'll do a little correction. I am actually not an iPhone user. I'm a Samsung user, and I'm the green bubble that probably annoys everybody in all the group chats. But so I just had to say that.
Fair.
So yeah, just in case you ask me questions about iPhones, like I don't know. But I also like work on a Mac too, so it's like I like work on so many different techs. Apparently, I like to just make it harder for myself. But ultimately, it's utilize what you have.
Yeah.
And but yeah, phones are like huge. Like
isn't that crazy too, that like you said iPhone, because I'm sure that was just automatic for you to say, right? Like that's just like the default.
Yeah, it's like when people say cameraman, right? So it's like, again, you like introduce other things of what if, what could be, like this is new, you know. So
I love that.
Yeah.
What's a good camera then to, if you know, let's say, yes, I'm in the market and I've watched those YouTube videos too with all the tech specs, tons of dudes like explaining things, and I'm just like, okay, but will it shoot my like simple interview video, or can I even do a short film on this? Like, I'm someone who would love the ability to do both, like interview styled, but also, you know, so it's small and easy to travel with, but also have the range and composition to shoot a short film, maybe like just to get practice.
Yeah, and I think that's the great thing. I get asked this question all the time about what camera should I buy. What you really need to, before you even like, because it can be very overwhelming, there's a lot of stuff out there, okay? You have to ask yourself, like, what is it that you want to film? So I love that you say, like, I love to do interviews. So that's the reason why, personally, I went with the Panasonic Lumix series. It's like a prosumer camera. What I mean by that is like consumers, like the ones that you can find at Costco, right? You can start off on the Canon T3i, all that stuff. But prosumer is like the next level up, where you're in between, like someone could just buy this as a hobby and you kind of want to take it to the next level without going broke. But it is an investment. So beyond asking yourself why you want a certain camera, you have to ask yourself, like, what are you shooting on first? Yeah, because I did a lot of on-camera interviews as a one-woman band, I specifically needed a flip-out screen. And a lot of the cameras like Sony and Canon, like I think Canon had a flip-out screen, but they didn't have an audio input because they were photo first. And as an interview, you need audio. Right. So I was like, okay, Canon's out. Sony didn't have a flip-out screen. And I was like, okay, like I guess I could attach a monitor, but then, you know, camera monitors can range anywhere from $500 to $1,500 on top of a camera to see yourself. So I'm like, I always like compact, you know, portable, affordable too, and just like I'm gonna use it all the time. Right. So I was looking at the Lumix series. I'm like, oh great, it's the first camera I ever got was the GH2, and I just kind of fell in love with the rawness of the files. And then when the GH4 came out, I believe it was the first 4K prosumer camera, so that was under $2,000 for the body, you know. So that might be a lot to people, but if we're talking about cameras in the industry, I'm like, I'm not spending $100,000. And you also have to ask yourself, like, what ecosystem do you want? Because these cameras, lenses, they're all their own system. So it's also like what lens, what look do you want? Because if there's a specific lens that you want that only works with a certain camera, that's also something to consider too, like the native lenses and stuff. There are adapters, but it could like affect like the focal length. But so the smart lenses that you can get with certain camera systems, when the autofocus happens, it just really depends on like what ecosystem you want to invest in, because the lens will actually end up being more expensive over time than the camera body itself. So,
Yeah.
A lot of times when you're buying camera kits, it comes with a kit lens, right? And so it's like that's the basic. But sometimes if you already know what lens you want, you might save a little more, or at least be more intentional by just buying the body by itself. So when you see online that this is the camera body for 1,000, or a camera kit comes with a lens and it's like, I don't know, like 2,000, you have to ask yourself, like, do you want that lens too? Because if not, maybe just buy the camera body and then buy the specific lens for that ecosystem and buy that. So it's like the kit lens is great when you want to start out, but if you want a specific look, like I specifically like shooting with prime lens too. What that means is that there's no zooming ability, but I can control the depth of field. So the nice soft bokeh in the background, like that is something I can control on a prime lens versus a zoom lens. And zoom lenses are nice, for instance, if you're shooting a wedding or something where you're on the go and you don't want to keep switching out the lens. It gives you that focal length to be like wide shot or zooming in and having like constant autofocus. So lens and what you want to work with, what events you shoot with, what types you're shooting with are so important when you're thinking about what camera to buy because of those reasons. And, depending on what that is, you can rack up a huge bill or you don't. And then for audio, like I have specific ones that most cameras nowadays do have a 3.5 millimeter like audio jack that comes in, like same size as your headphone jack, but one's audio specifically, one's for headphones. You want to be able to possibly monitor the audio. So having headphones with the mic is important too. And some cameras like long time ago only have one or the other. And I'm like, well, I want to monitor the audio.
Yeah.
So let me do that. And then there's just so many things now. I work with Ceramonic. They're amazing. They have these wireless transmitters and receivers now. So you can wear these lavalier microphones that are wireless and then like plug it directly into your DSLR, your mirrorless, and you don't have to sync it in post anymore. It'll capture audio with the video at the same time. And
that's really nice.
That audio will probably run you about $200. So it just really depends on what it is. So as an interviewer, like tripod, a camera that flips out, having audio and headphone inputs to at least like understand the audio, that I'm not peaking and not blowing out the audio. Nothing's worse than doing a whole interview and realizing the audio was not working. So that's why I always recommend 2 sources of audio too. So you have like audio from the camera and then maybe another onboard audio as well. But like I brought so much gear that I'd be happy to show you. Like I know that's in another segment of yours, but I brought so many gear, not only for mobile users, because I feel like if you're starting out, I have gear for users who are starting out just on their phone. And there are some amazing items that you can get to just really optimize the lighting or the audio with your phone. And so you don't have to buy another camera.
Yeah.
Truth is, your iPhone, your whatever you have as a phone is the phone you're going to be using anyway. So you might as well optimize what you're always going to bring with you and have on you.
Exactly.
Like sometimes I'm like, I'm traveling today. Do I really want to bring a lens and a gear and all this stuff? So it's like maximize what you already have. So I have tools for that I brought. And then I also brought, like, if you're interested in starting to look into the short film stuff, but also utilize it as interviewing stuff, the camera that I use. And also we can talk about other cameras, but it's like, I just love playing with cameras. And everything, just like, us, like we all have different stories. We all have different things that we're good at. And so it just really depends on what you want the output or the outcome, the final product to look like, be like, because that will dictate kind of what gear you get as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's just so crazy. Like I remember when I first like moved over to the filmmaking side and like had no idea about anything. And even I thought that every lens zoomed. I thought that that was just something that every camera lens could do. And then like learning that like, no, that's not something every lens can do. You don't even want it sometimes. Like just so many things that I had no idea. And like, I'm learning so much more now, at least about like what the capabilities are, probably more so than like the actual technical, like this camera is good for this, but just what you can do in general. Like it blows my mind.
Yeah. And that's what it is like, I'm not an expert, but at the same time, I'm so willing to share because I believe that, you know, technology and filmmaking and just anything should be accessible to everybody. And so it's like, how do I make filmmaking and tech accessible and inclusive? Because, you know, I've gone to many conventions where, excuse me, like I'm one of the few females, and I know there's more, but maybe it's perhaps they haven't felt included or reached out to in the past. It doesn't mean we don't exist. So it's like doing the work to create podcasts that you're seeking out people who are doing this and creating a channel that you're seeking out specifically people in this field to introduce an audience to voices that haven't been heard. And I think, you know, just who I am as a person, like never seeing myself represented on mainstream as an Asian American woman, like beyond like a news anchor, like I'm like, I entertain. Like, you know, like, do I have to be just a anchor? Like, is that my only role available to me? But if people don't see it, sometimes it's hard for them to envision it for themselves.
Totally.
And so that's the great thing about starting your own thing and your podcast and videos. Like, if I could just make an impact of someone just hearing or seeing that, seeing is believing. So, you know, I always bring this up because Valentina V is an amazing director, DPs for The Rock, and like, you know, she does so many amazing things. Also a resident lighting pro at Adobe and also Aperture. But she, you know, has always said this thing. It's like when women see us, they are inspired to do it too. And that is the whole essence of why I continue to keep my channel going, even if I have like not many subscribers or followers. Like if one person says like seeing you do this and showcasing that other people do it too inspires me to even get into the field. Like that makes my day. Like I've done my job, you know? It's not money. It's like I've done my job.
That's exactly how we view it, because it can feel like it's a numbers game and it's like, no, like we don't care. It's about the message, and that's exactly what I saw immediately when I viewed your page and your channel. I'm like, this is so badass. You don't get to see this. And I completely agree. Like it makes me feel like not alone in this world and like want to educate myself more and know that I could go to a convention and not feel like an idiot.
Yeah, it's
like
let me go, come with us, like get sneakers, but like like walking a football stadium. But yeah, it's like I really want to do it. So I'm actually really, really excited to be the host of NAB show, because that was a partnership that I kind of started with them like since 2018. So it's just
congrats.
Thank you. It's just been a full circle moment because my dad took me to my first one like
I read about
10 years ago,
that
and I was
so
like,
sweet.
oh my god, like it's crazy how it's like it's not only, you know, I'm at NAB, but it's like I have a show with my name in it, and I haven't fully like processed it. But what I do know is what keeps me going is like every week I get to choose the guests on my show, and because of that and who I am, I'm very intentional of bringing on more women and filmmakers of color, specifically to again widen the perspective, and that when you go to these convention shows, it should be tech and filmmaking and conversations and partnerships that involve a wide array of diversity and inclusion. And it's even folks that, you know, might have a disability. That's another group too that is, you know, needs more attention and awareness, because it's like, like how can we make things accessible for like a broader community? Because if you are a company designing products like that for a full range, you're gonna be successful. Like designing things with inclusion and diversity and accessibility in mind, you're gonna have a much easier time just getting the positive PR, natural PR for your brands and company and products anyway. So
Yeah.
I think that's, again, it's authenticity, right?
Yes.
Totally. It all goes back to that.
It always goes back to that. So I was like, yeah, you could do this, but like it really comes down to this.
Yeah. Well, seeing is believing. I think let's get into some demos.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool.
I think so.
Thanks for listening to FemmeRegard Podcast. If you like what you hear, tune in next time for more tips on the filmmaking business and insightful conversations with industry professionals over tea. We can only grow with your support, so please subscribe, share, rate, and give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. If you leave us a great comment, we might give you a shout out on the show. For more on us, check us out at FemmeRegard.com.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.